I was 67 the evening my son sat me down at his own dining table and asked me, very politely, to vanish. He didn't use that word. He never would. He said it across a roast and a bottle of wine he'd been saving, with his wife topping up everyone's glass before anyone had finished. "Mom, we've been thinking. We need you to take an early retirement. We just can't carry daycare anymore." I set my folder down beside my plate, soft old leather, the color of a dried cranberry, and folded my hands over it. I didn't open it. Not then. They believed the hardest part of that night would be whatever I answered. They were wrong about that, the way they'd been wrong about a great many things. The hardest part was already sitting in their own paperwork, in a number they'd hidden from me, and in a quiet little plan they'd made. For the house I'd worked 30 years to pay off. Stay with me, because that spreadsheet folded inside my purse was nowhere near the cruelest thing on that table. Not even close. Welcome back to Fierce Mom Stories, where the women everybody counted out get to say the last calm word. If a steady voice and an honest ledger sound like justice to you, then you're in the right place. Leave a comment and don't forget to subscribe. The invitation came as a text on a Tuesday afternoon while I was reconciling a client's quarterly. "Sunday dinner, Mum. 6 sharp. Important." My son does not write the word important. He calls when he wants something and texts when he feels guilty about wanting it. I've been keeping books for 41 years. 3 small companies still trust me with theirs, and I'm at my kitchen table by 5:30 most mornings with my reading glasses and a mug, going over balance sheets before the kettle's even cooled. People look at a woman my age and assume she's coasting toward the finish line. I let them assume. It's a useful thing, being underestimated. You hear more. That same week, a thick envelope had landed in my mailbox between a hydro bill and a flyer for snow tires. Mortgage paperwork. Refinance documents I'd apparently agreed to look over and sign. A favor stretching back from when I'd co-signed for them 3 years before. A favor that somehow never quite finished itself. I slid the pages into that worn cranberry folder and tucked it in my bag. I brought it Sunday without letting myself say out loud why. I drove the half hour out to their neighborhood with the folder on the passenger seat and the heater ticking. October in our part of southern Ontario can't make up its mind. The maples were turning, but it was already cold enough that I dug my good coat out of the cedar closet. Their street is one of those new developments where every lawn is cut to the blade and every garage holds something leased. I slowed at the entrance. There were 2 SUVs in their driveway, both newer than anything I'd ever owned, and beside them a silver sedan I recognized. My daughter-in-law's mother, her car. There was a wreath already on the door, and it was barely Thanksgiving. I sat there a moment with the engine running, looking at the house. My daughter's little hatchback was tucked along the curb. She'd come too then. She's a nurse, my girl, runs triage in the ER downtown, picks up doubles like they're going out of style, and still she shows up early to everything. Through the front window I could see her, standing with her arms crossed, that tight line in her shoulders she gets when she's holding something in. I put on my glasses to check the time, took them off again. Whatever this dinner was, it had been arranged. Carefully. The daughter-in-law's mother invited, my daughter looking braced. I was the only person walking up to that door who didn't yet know the agenda. Inside it smelled like rosemary and money. The kitchen had been redone since I'd last been over. A slab of quartz on the island wide enough to bowl on, the kind of faucet that pulls down on a hose. My grandson was asleep down the hall, 10 months old, all cheeks and fists, the little monitor glowing soft on the counter. My daughter-in-law hugged me with the very tips of her arms and reached straight for the wine. "Red okay?" She'd poured 3 glasses before I'd got my coat off. "Honestly, your mom has been such a lifesaver with the baby on Tuesdays," she said to the room, smiling like she was reading it off a card. Tuesdays were news to me. I'd had the baby exactly twice since summer, both times because she'd phoned in a panic. But I said thank you and didn't correct her, because correcting people too early is how you stop them from showing you who they are. My son came in loud, the way he gets when he's nervous and wants you not to notice he's nervous. "Mom, you would not believe the quarter I just had." He listed off a deal he'd landed, a figure with a great many zeros in it, a trip his company was sending him on out west. a sales club thing, all expenses, golf included. I raised that boy on no-name cereal and library cards and hand-me-down skates from the church bin. I know the difference between a man who has money and a man who badly needs you to know he has money. He's the second kind. He always has been, and it has nothing to do with the math and everything to do with what he thinks money makes him in other people's eyes. On the fridge, held up by a magnet shaped like a little canoe, there was a slip of paper, a daycare deposit receipt. A Montessori place 2 towns over, $2,200 a month, and a deposit check already cashed. Right there, under the canoe magnet, while the woman of the house told the room she couldn't afford childcare. My daughter caught me reading it and looked away fast. We sat. Cloth napkins, the good ones. A roast that had cost more than my first month's mortgage payment back in '88, easy. The daughter-in-law's mother held forth about a river cruise she's booked for the Danube next spring, and how she really should get her place repainted before she goes. My daughter-in-law watched my son the way you'd watch a horse at the gate, waiting for the bell. I ate slowly and counted things, because counting is what I do when a room feels off. 2 leased SUVs, a $2,200 deposit on the fridge, a son who couldn't quite meet my eyes over his own beautiful table. Dessert came out, a bakery tart nobody in that house had baked. My son set his fork down and squared his shoulders like he was about to walk a client through a pitch deck. "Mom, we wanted to bring something up, together, about the baby, about the future." "I'm listening," I said. "Daycare's gone completely insane," he said. $2,200 a month for an infant, and that's the reasonable one. We've run the numbers," he swallowed. "We need you to retire early. We just can't carry it." The table went still. Even the monitor seemed to hold its little electronic breath. And I laughed, not meanly. Just a soft, surprised little sound, the kind that slips out when a child tells you something earnest and impossible. "That's a good one," I said. "You can't carry daycare on $280,000 a year between the two of you." My daughter-in-law's smile pulled tight at the corners. "It isn't about the money, Gwen. It's about family. It's about what's right for the baby. A child shouldn't be raised by strangers." "Not when he's got a grandmother who could," her mother added, smoothing her napkin. "Who's just sitting at home anyway? Could." Such a small, soft word, doing such an enormous amount of lifting. My son leaned in, hands open, sincere as a man can be when he's already decided. "You'd be home with him every day. You're winding down anyway. It just makes sense, Mom." Winding down. I keep 3 sets of books to the penny, and I'm the one the auditor phones when a number won't sit right. But sure. Winding down. I looked around the table. My son, hopeful and a little desperate. His wife, coiled tight. Her mother, righteous as a sermon. And my daughter, staring at her plate like it might open up and swallow her. "Before I answer," I said, and I kept my voice even, "let me make sure I understand the arithmetic. Because if I'm going to give up 40 years of work, I'd like to know exactly what I'm giving it up for." I reached for my water glass. "Not the folder." "Not yet. The moment I opened that folder, the dinner would stop being theirs and start being mine, and I wasn't quite ready to let go of being the person nobody had figured out yet." "Daycare's $2,200, I said. "I saw the receipt on the fridge, the deposit's already gone through, so we both know that's the plan if I say no. Now, help me understand. The two of you clear $280 before tax. That's roughly $15,000 a month landing in the account after everything Ottawa takes. Mortgage on a place like this, even with what you put down, call it $4,000. So what's eating the other 10? My son shifted. "It's not that simple, Mom." "It never is," I said gently. "But the thing about a household, sweetheart, is that it's exactly that simple in the end. Money comes in. Money goes out. I've spent my whole life on the going out side, and I can tell you the going out is never the part anybody wants to look at." I nodded toward the driveway. 2 SUVs. Leased, both of them, I'd guess. Your father always said you can tell a leased car by how clean the windshield sticker is. That's what, $1,500 a month between them? The club out by the lake. I saw the bag tags in the hall. That's another $800-900. The cleaning service that did the front step today. The tart nobody baked. The cruise we're hearing so much about. I turned to her mother and smiled, not unkindly. That one's not yours, of course. Forgive me. I'm just adding. The daughter-in-law's mother had gone a particular shade. Here's what I keep landing on, I went on. You haven't asked me to lend you money. You've got money. What you've asked me to do is hand you a second full-time worker, unpaid, for the next 5 years, so that none of those numbers up there has to change. And you've dressed it up in the word family, because family is the only word that makes free labor sound like love. That's not fair, my son said, and there was a real hurt in it, which is the thing about my son. He half believes his own story even as he's telling it. No, I agreed. It isn't. But neither's the thing you haven't said yet. I let that sit. Because you didn't bring me here just to babysit, did you? Babysitting you could have asked over the phone. There's a second envelope in this conversation. There always is. Why don't you go ahead and put it on the table? He glanced at his wife. She gave the smallest nod, and he reached behind him to the sideboard and brought out a folder of his own. A stiff new one, the kind the bank gives you, with the lender's logo embossed on the front. And there it was. The actual reason for the rosemary and the good wine. The mortgage, he said. We need to refinance. The variable's killing us, and the line of credit we took out on top, it resets in March to a much higher rate. We've talked to the bank. They'll do it. They'll roll it all together at a fixed rate, but... He couldn't quite say it, so his wife said it for him. But the lender wants the guarantor's signature renewed, she said. Yours. Same as 3 years ago, it's just a formality. And there it was. The whole shape of the evening clicked into place like a ledger that finally balances. I almost admired it. Let me make sure I have this right, I said slowly. You want me to retire? Quit my work? Walk away from the income from 3 companies, and in the same breath, you want me to put my name on a refinance as your guarantor. I looked from one of them to the other. Children. The only reason a bank would take me as a guarantor is my income. The income you're asking me to give up. The minute I retire, I'm worth far less to that lender, not more. You're asking me to take away the very thing that makes my signature mean anything, and to sign anyway, on a loan I'd be on the hook for, in a household where I can already see the money's going out faster than it comes in. I shook my head, almost gently. You haven't run the numbers. You've run away from them. The silence had a texture now. My daughter-in-law's mother had stopped pretending to eat. That's when I finally reached for my own folder. The soft cranberry one. I'd brought it not knowing why, and now I knew exactly why. There's something in here you should see, I said. Before anyone says another word about formalities. I opened it. The first pages were the refinance documents the bank had mailed me to look over and sign. I'd done more than look. I'd spent 2 evenings with them, and a yellow legal pad, the way I do, because that's the only way I know how to read anything. I went through this, I said, sliding the top sheet around so they could all see my pencil marks in the margins. Page 4. The guarantee isn't limited the way it was last time. Last time my exposure was capped. This version makes me liable for the full amount, the whole rolled-up balance, the mortgage and the line of credit together. If you default, the bank doesn't come after the house first and me second. It can come straight at me. At my house, the one that's paid off. I tapped the page. I don't think you read page 4, son. I don't think you read any of it. I think someone at the bank said sign here and you handed it to me and hoped. He'd gone pale. He hadn't read it. I could see he hadn't. And then there's this, I said, and I turned to the next set of pages, and this is the part I want you to stay for, because this was the cruelest thing on that table, and it wasn't mine, it was theirs. When the bank sends a guarantee package, it includes a summary of the borrower's accounts. For the guarantor's protection, they have to. I'm supposed to know what I'm guaranteeing. I smoothed the page flat, so I know about the standing transfer. My daughter-in-law's wine glass stopped halfway to her mouth. $1,500, I said, out of the joint account. Every month. For going on 2 years now. I lifted my eyes to her, and then, slowly, to her mother across the table. To you! The daughter-in-law's mother set down her fork. $1,500 a month, I said again, because some numbers deserve to be said twice. Paid to one grandmother, for, I gather, the 1 day a week she takes the baby. While at this very table, you ask the other grandmother to quit her career and do it 5 days a week. For free. And call it family. I turned back to my son, and for the first time my voice wasn't quite so steady, because this was my boy, and I'd raised him better than this, or I'd thought I had. Did you know? He stared at his wife. The look on his face told me everything. He hadn't. She'd handled the accounts, the way she handled everything, and he'd let her, because not looking is so much more comfortable than looking. My daughter, my nurse, my honest one, finally spoke, very quietly, into her plate. I tried to tell you, Russ, in the spring. You didn't want to hear it. You're going through our private accounts, my daughter-in-law said, and her voice had a wet, climbing edge to it. That's an invasion. A real grandmother wouldn't bring a spreadsheet to her grandson's dinner table. I looked at her for a long moment. I wasn't angry, which I think frightened her more than anger would have. A real grandmother, I said, teaches a child the truth. She doesn't raise him to invoice the people who love him and call it a budget. And I didn't go through anything, dear. The bank handed me your numbers, because you asked me to put my name and my paid-off house behind your debts. You opened this folder. I just read it out loud. I closed it. Soft leather, that quiet little sound it makes. So here's my answer, I said, the complete one, with sources. I set my reading glasses down on the table, and I looked at each of them in turn. My son, his wife, her mother, and my daughter, who'd been braver than all of us. I will not retire. I have work I love and people who count on me, and I'm good at it. And being good at something at 67 is not winding down. It's just being good at something. And I will not guarantee this refinance. Without my signature, that loan does not go through. The bank will hear from me Monday morning, in writing, withdrawing as guarantor entirely. My son's head came up fast. Mom, without the refinance, the line of credit resets in March. We could lose the house. Then you'll sell the house, I said. It's too big anyway, and it costs you more than your marriage can carry. You'll sell it and buy something you can actually afford, the way people do every single day in this country. The way I did, once with 2 kids and no help, and a furnace that gave out in February. It isn't the end of the world, it's just the end of pretending. I gathered my glasses into my pocket. And there's one more thing. The $90,000, Mom. The $90,000 I lent you 3 years ago. For the down payment, I said. Out of my RRSP. There was never any paperwork because you were my son and I trusted you, and trust is exactly the thing you've been spending. We're going to put it in writing now. A proper repayment schedule, starting the 1st of next month. I'll have it drawn up. Reasonable terms, reasonable interest, the kind a bank would give you, except kinder, because I'm still your mother. My daughter-in-law laughed, that same wet, bitter sound. So that's what this is. Revenge, money. No, I said. You used money to lie. I'm using it to tell the truth. It happens to be the only weapon I've got, and I'd much rather have brought a casserole. I stood and picked up my folder and my coat. You said a real grandmother wouldn't choose a spreadsheet over her grandson. You've got that backwards, dear. I will always, always be that little boy's grandmother. I will never be your line item. And I walked out. Past the 2 leased SUVs, past the wreath on the door that was up too early, out into the cold, clean October air and into my own paid-for car, and I drove home through the dark with my hands steady on the wheel and the radio off. The refinance died exactly the way I'd told them it would. Without my name behind it, the lender wouldn't carry it on the numbers they had. In March, the line of credit reset to the higher rate, and the arithmetic they'd been outrunning for 3 years finally caught up to them at a dead sprint. By the time the snow went off the lawns, there was a sign on the front of that big house, listed, as it happened, by the very agent my daughter-in-law had quietly phoned months earlier to ask what my own little place might be worth. I found that out later, and I'll let you sit with it the way I had to. They bought something smaller in a town up the highway. 3 bedrooms, no gate, a single driveway because one of the leases went back early. The $1,500 a month to her mother stopped almost the moment the truth was said out loud at that table. Funny, isn't it? How a family arrangement evaporates the instant it costs more in shame than it ever saved in cash. The river crews got quieter in conversation too. I don't ask. The harder reckoning happened at home, in their new kitchen, with no quartz island to hide behind. For the first time in his married life, my son sat down with the accounts his wife had always managed alone, the standing transfer, the agent she'd called, the cash out they'd been counting on to dodge the reset. He hadn't looked in years. Not really looked. He looked now. They're in counseling. I hope it does some good. I'm not paying for it, and I told him so, and I think the not paying did him more good than anything. He came by alone in April, on one of those raw Ontario days that can't decide between sleet and rain. He stood on my porch a long while before he knocked, the way he used to as a teenager when he'd broken something and was working up to telling me. He didn't fully apologize. He's not there yet, and I've given up waiting on the men in my life to arrive precisely on schedule. But he said one true thing, with his hands jammed in his coat pockets and his eyes somewhere over my shoulder. I was so scared of looking like a failure that I almost did something I couldn't have taken back. I made him a cup of tea and told him that fear explains a great deal and excuses almost nothing, and that the two of those facts have to live in the same house, and you just learn to keep them in separate rooms. I see my grandson on Saturdays now, my choosing, my joy. We go to the library, the real one, the free one, the good one, and we take out the picture books with the soft corners and the crayon marks from 100 other kids, and we read them on the rug until his little legs get restless. I babysit that boy because I adore him to the bottom of my heart, not because I've been invoiced for him. There's a whole world of difference between those two things, and I intend to make sure he grows up knowing it in his bones. The wine never did come out of my daughter-in-law's good tablecloth. She'd knocked her glass over reaching to refill it that night, somewhere in the middle of everything, and the stain set deep into the linen. My daughter told me, months later, that they finally just threw the cloth away. Some marks you can't scrub out no matter how you try. You just stop setting the table over them and start fresh on something plain. So here's what I know, after 67 years and one very expensive Sunday dinner. Love is a gift. You give it freely, or it isn't love, it's an account, and the people who try to turn the first one into the second will always tell you it's about family. Don't let them write you into the budget. You are a person. You were never a line item. That's my story. They set the table. I brought the math. And if you've ever been treated like a cost to be managed by the very people you'd have given anything to, let this be your permission to close the folder, push back your chair, and walk out into your own paid-for life. Leave me a comment and tell me I'm wrong, or tell me you've been there too. Subscribe if a steady voice and an honest ledger sound like justice to you. And I'll see you next time.